Hello, welcome back to the channel. So, Stains are in kind of a weird spot right now, where they're both the most, but also kind of the least relevant they have ever been, like, at the same time. Because we have gotten some really good Sustains. Like, Hyacinth is insane on almost any team, even outside of Kestra's teams, even if that is where she is the best. Like, we got Lingsha and Gallagher, who are also very good. The new version of Dan, who seems really good, even if he isn't out yet, so we don't know for sure, but let's be honest, he's probably going to be good, let's be honest. But, because, every new character we have gotten has been at least good, so he will probably be. But at the same time, outside of teams that, need healers to work, and, some follow-up stuff, there's a lot of the times where you feel like you would just rather go triple support, to just kill the enemy as fast as possible than having to worry about, surviving. The biggest example of this is obviously Finon, since he wants to be able to get to his ultimate form as fast as possible, and, in his ultimate form, he basically can't die. Now, I think this is mainly if you're trying to go for, zero cycling, which doesn't really matter that much for the average player, since for the average player, it's mainly just about getting all the rewards. But I think this kind of shows, the main problem with Sustains now is that, they can't be just Sustains anymore. Just healing or just shielding is not really good enough, especially with how strong a lot of the enemies are getting now, when you could just use supports to try and kill the enemy as fast as possible. It's why almost every new Sustain has had something else they can do besides just healing or shielding. Hyacinth buffs Back's HP and also does a lot of damage. Ho can buff and give energy. Lingsha can, buff break damage and also does a lot of damage. Now that I think about it, it's almost every support we've gotten recently is partially a damage dealer. Even the new version of Dan has a follow-up with his dragon, which I think is kind of just a symptom of how much more HP the enemies have now, since, if a character isn't helping you be able to actually kill the enemy, then they don't really feel that good to use. Yeah, someone like Luocha might keep you alive, and I do think he is kind of underrated. But, that's kind of all he does. But, staying alive isn't gonna matter if you can't clear the content, Now, this isn't always the case, since there are some bosses like the Flame River that attack so fast and just do so much damage that you might just die before you can actually kill the boss. And for the average player, I think you don't need to go triple support, especially since Sustains give them a bit of an extra, safety net. But they kind of leads into the other problem of Sustains just not really being that exciting, and just being some of the least pulled characters in the game. And I think that's kind of why they're trying to, make them be able to do more damage and do these all sorts of other things that other paths do, because most people just don't really care that much about them. They get 2 or 3 Sustain characters, and then they just don't really feel like they need more, since they would rather get supports or DPSs and that kind of thing, which I think does make sense to some extent. Characters like, Finon or Sunday are a lot more exciting than, a healer like Gallagher or Lingsha, even if they are, really good. But I think it's also partially why they don't really make Sustains that much in the first place, since people just don't really pull for them. So they're like, why would we make characters if people aren't going to get them, I mean, there's a reason we got Dane for free and not Evernight, since most people are going to be pulling for her or just saving for Syrian, so it doesn't help that Sustains don't really have any real heavy hitter characters like an Acheron or a Fei Xiao or that kind of thing. The closest I think is maybe Aventurine, but even then I feel like most of its hype came kind of after the story, and I also don't feel like it's quite at that level of hype, And also maybe the new version of Dan as well, which I think is kind of the closest we have gotten, but being between 2 really hyped characters did kind of hinder a lot of the excitement he could have had, especially since he is free, so most people aren't going to really pull for him. Now, I do think it is good that he is free, especially since it's our first preservation character in so long, but it's still... one thing that is at least kind of getting better for Sustains is the amount of options that we have. Since we do have at least a decent amount of budget options now, mainly just for healers. We have Gallagher, who is really good, Luocha as well, even though most people probably chose Ron May instead. Lynx, kind of, but only really for, Yuan Lee teams, but even then, there is probably still just better options on those teams. Preservation is at least kind of better off now, since for a while, Aventurine was kind of the only really good option you had. Fu Xuan is okay, but against a lot of the newer bosses, she kind of just tends to just get one shot, And the other options weren't really great even back in 1.0. Like, I think the core problem with sustains is that, like, there's only so much you can do with them, which is partially, like, why we get so few of them. I mean, it's kind of just a problem with Star in general, but I think it's especially bad with sustains. Like, there was only so many things you could put to a character's kit before they start to have overlap, you know? Especially when their whole job is just to heal or to shield. Like, I mean, the Venturine and Dance kits are pretty similar to one another, and, you know, Hyacinth and Linksha also have a lot of similarities, just kind of being for different archetypes. So I think it leads to them feeling a bit samey, and then that kind of leads to people feeling like they don't need them even more since they already have a character that fills that role. It doesn't help that a lot of their Litecoin options are pretty mediocre as well. Like, they aren't bad, but they're kind of just boring. Like, like Textured Memories is only really good on, like, Fu Xuan, and that's about it. Like, the best 4-star preservation option, by far, is locked behind the Battle Pass, which feels kind of scummy, I'm not gonna lie. And for Abundance, it's kind of pretty similar, since most of them either just increase your healing or just give you energy regen, and that's about it. But they also have stuff like Dreams Montage, which is like, why is this an Abundance Lycone? Like, this feels more like a support or like a DPS Lycone. This just doesn't really make any sense. Or even for like Nihility or something. At the end of the day, sustains are definitely not bad right now. Like, there are really good ones. But it does feel like they are becoming less and less relevant on teams that don't require them to work. Which I think, for one, just shows how strong supports are. But also, it kind of just exemplifies the HP problem even more, because if people feel like they need 3 supports just to kill a boss, maybe the HP has kind of gone too far. I mean, they have even like tried to push some sustains more with, you know, the new boss being weak against shields, but there is always going to kind of be the problem of why, like, try to not take the damage when you could just kill the boss so you don't have to worry about the damage at all. Like, I just think they need to do something to make sustains feel more exciting and worth it to use. Since once we get Dan for free, there isn't really gonna be much of a reason for a lot of people to pull for more sustains unless they just make a boss to, like, ruin shields or something. But I feel like that would just be a really bad solution. It doesn't help that we haven't gotten a Abundance character in, like, over a year since the last one was Linksha. Like, yeah, we did get Hyacinth, but she is Remembrance and not Abundance, so, like, the Abundance has basically just kind of been abandoned because we got Hyacinth. But, I don't know. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.